Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our next session, GitHub Copilot Understanding Budgets. My name is Anna. I'll be your producer for this session. I'm an event planner for Reactor, joining you from Redmond, Washington. Before we start, I do have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional, and on topic. Keep an eye on that chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our presenter to answer. Our session is being recorded. It will be available to view on demand right here on the Reactor channel. With that, I'd love to turn it over to our presenter for today. Thank you so much for.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? I'm Todd Toller. I'm a cloud solution architect with Microsoft's Core Tech Success, technical success developer productivity team. And today we're going to talk about usage-based billing. It's a big topic these days. So as GitHub continues to move towards usage-based billing, we want to make sure that customers have the right controls in place for your, for the billing platforms. And so that's where the billing platform or the GitHub billing platform comes in. Admins can set the budgets, define user level limits, manage cost center spend, and monitor usage over time so that we can give teams access to AI-powered capabilities without feeling like the spend is kind of unmanaged. And so today, this is less about how budgets work and more about how GitHub's billing controls help customers plan, govern, and scale usage beyond or usage-based adoption responsibly. So what we're going to cover today is we have we'll walk through how to think about budgets and controls as GitHub continues to move towards a more usage-based billing model, which is scheduled for June 1st. So it's only I think it's next Monday. And so we'll start with the move to usage-based billing. What's changing? Why it matters, and how it changes the way customers need to plan for AI and platform consumption. And from there, we'll cover key budgeting considerations like how to think about the enterprise-wide budget, default user level entitlements, department or cost center budgets, and any exceptions certain users may need. So then we'll move into budget controls, which is the budget controls available in the GitHub billing platform today, and how those controls help admins manage spend with more confidence. After that, we're going to walk through a few budget scenarios so that you can see how these controls work, to work together in practice, including some enterprise budgets, user level budgets, individual overrides, and cost center budgets. Try to give you some real world scenarios so that you can start thinking about what fits best in your scenario. And then finally, we're going to close with monitoring usage and spend, how to track the consumption over time, as well as identify where spend is coming from and making adjustments before limits block users from access to the AI capabilities. So the move to usage-based billing is a big reason of probably why we're all here today. So we're going to start with it, start with that to kind of understand that this is the foundational concept that everything else in today's session builds on. The key thing to understand is that we're moving from a model where every Copilot interaction was treated as a flat request, regardless of how much compute it actually consumed and such, to a model where billing is based on the actual tokens processed. And so that's a much more accurate and transparent way to measure AI work. So if you've worked with any large language model API directly, whether it's OpenAI, Anthropic, or others, you already know how tokens kind of work, and that's the native unit of cost. Input tokens, output tokens, and cache tokens each have different rates depending on the model. And so usage-based billing brings that same level of granularity to Copilot. So over the next few slides, we'll break down exactly why this shift is happening, what it unlocks, and what the timeline looks like. So let's go ahead and dig in here. Move to the next slide here. Okay. So before we go further, I just want to be very clear about what is not changing, because that's just as important as what is. Your base plan pricing is not changing. That's the same. It's the same price as it was. Copilot Business stays at $19 per user per month, and Copilot Enterprise stays at $39 per user per month. Those prices are the same as before. They haven't changed. What's different is that each license now contributes its dollar value as monthly AI credits to the shared enterprise pool, which is a big change. And so a business license contributes $19 in AI credits, and an enterprise license contributes $39 in credits. The math is straightforward. The sticker price hasn't moved. It's the same cost, same entry point. Second, the core developer experience is still included at no additional cost. Code completion, next edit suggestions remain part of all plans, and they do not consume AI credits. These are the bread and butter features for your engineers to use hundreds of times a day, and they continue to work exactly like they do today. So with no AI credit impact on the system. So the day-to-day coding experience for the vast majority of developers is unchanged. The billing change primarily affects premium features like chat, agentic workflows, and advanced model access, not the inline completions they rely on every day. So here's the change. Starting June 1st, premium request units go away entirely. They're replaced by GitHub AI credits and which are consumed based on actual token usage. So input tokens, output tokens, and cache tokens. They're priced according to the published API rate for each model, which are which are out there on the internet. You can find them. We support several model providers with including Anthropic, OpenAI, I think Google, Gemini. AI credits create one consistent billing unit across model providers. So it gives us the ability to have different models at similar prices to what we to them all. So what this means practically is billing is now deterministic and transparent. There's no more abstraction layers, no more request to GPT-4o costs what its tokens cost, and a request to a lighter model costs less. And so cache tokens are billed at a reduced rate, so repeated context within a session is cheaper. That's Copilot code review is also now consumes GitHub action minutes in addition to AI credits. So kind of the thing we like to say is here's why code review uses agentic tool calling under the hood to gather broader repository context, things like directory structure, related code, and cross-file references. So it can give you feedback that actually reflects how your changes fit into the larger architecture. So that agentic analysis runs on GitHub Actions compute. So it consumes actions minutes at the same per minute rates as your other workflows. For most customers, this additional actions minute usage is expected to fit within existing monthly entitlements. It's the same model used by Copilot's Cloud Agent. So if you want to monitor it proactively, you can filter actions insights by the Copilot pull request, reviewer workflow, or check your billing usage report. So on the timeline, the announcement went out April 27th. In May, the billing preview was made available earlier this month. And so this is your window. That preview is the window to instrument your monitoring, review what the token consumption patterns are going to look like or have been historically in your organization, and configure budget controls before anything actually bills. June 1st is the day when all of this goes live. Okay, let's see here. Looks like we're all right with time here. So now let's break down. We got GitHub AI credit usage, how we're going to break it down. So we're going to break down the 3 token types because understanding these is the foundation for managing your costs effectively. So first, we have input tokens. These are based on everything you send to the model, your prompt, the surrounding code context, open files, and any additional context the tool assembles on your behalf. This is typically the largest token category in any given interaction, and it scales with the size of your code base and the context window. So if you're working in a large mono repo or passing entire files as context, your input token count will be higher. This is one of the key levers for cost. The more context you provide, the more input tokens you're going to consume. The second one are output tokens. So the second lever that we have here. So these are the AI generated responses. This is code, chat answers, tool use calls, and any other content the model produces. Output tokens carry the highest per token cost because they require the most compute to generate. A short code suggestion consumes far fewer output tokens than a multi-paragraph explanation or a large code refactor. This is worth keeping in mind when you're thinking about which workflows drive the most spend, so that you can act appropriately towards those. The third level is cache tokens. These represent context that's reused from previous interactions within the same session. So when you're having a multi-turn conversation in Copilot chat, the model doesn't reprocess the prior context from scratch. It just caches it and keeps it and allows it to go. Cache tokens are the least expensive per token, and they also improve response speed. So as you're going to get a little better response. It's similar. Most people will have some concept of what a cache works, how a cache works. So it's a natural efficiency gain that you get for free in conversational workflows. So the takeaway here is that not all tokens are created equal. They're not equal in cost, at least. Output tokens are the most expensive. Input tokens are in the middle, and cache tokens are the cheapest. So when you're optimizing for cost, focus on understanding which workflows generate the most output tokens and which models you're routing them to. So what this change unlocks for you is one of the biggest things that we got is the pools include usage across users. So before, or today, the way it is, and today's May 27th, so a few days before June 1st, the pool there's no pool. If you have $39 worth of credits, your user has to get as close to $39 as they can to get the full value out of their license. That if one user used 1 minute or one token and another used 3,900 tokens, they're going to get charged the same. So you had to try to be more efficient. Now that pool includes usage across users, so you can share it across your team. You can build based off of how many users you have. It also uses the high level watermark. So if you have a high water level mark, whatever you want to say. So if you had 100 users this month and 105, you added 5 more in the middle of the month, you would get, you'd have the value for 105, even if you took 5 away at the end of the month, based off until the next billing cycle. So it's a multi-model access. You have all the different all the access through one control plane. You can continue accessing exactly like you had before, and there's a few broader feature sets. So we'll be able to offer things like larger context windows and improved Copilot performance and quality. So budget considerations. So why we're evolving pricing. Let's start with the honest reality of this. Why this change is happening. Managing software at enterprise scale has never been harder, and AI is accelerating that complexity. So from a pricing standpoint, the previous request-based model simply doesn't map to how AI compute actually works. So under the hood, every interaction is priced by the model providers in tokens, not requests. And so a single request could consume a few hundred tokens or tens of thousands, depending on the context size, the model choice, the output length, all the different pieces of that. So treating all requests as equal created a bit of a mismatch where between what we were charging and what the underlying infrastructure actually cost. As people, as usage ramped up, it became unmanageable. And so the AI model market is also moving very quickly. Labs are constantly adjusting pricing, they're releasing new models and changing token economics weekly. These things change all the time. And so we need a billing structure that can adapt to that without requiring a pricing overhaul every time a new model ships. And so usage-based billing solves both of these problems. It aligns costs to actual compute consumption, and it creates a flexible framework that can absorb model and pricing changes as they happen. So it also unlocks capabilities that the old model structurally could not support, like larger context windows and future agentic workflows, which we'll talk about on the next slide. Okay. All right, so let's start with section 1, usage-based billing. This is the foundational concept that everyone else in today, or everything else in today's session builds on. So the key thing to understand is that when we're moving from a model where every Copilot interaction was treated as a flat request, regardless of how much compute it actually consumed. A model, now we're moving to a model where billing is based on the actual tokens processed. So that's a much more accurate and transparent way to measure AI work. If you've worked with any of the large language models large language models directly, like OpenAI, Anthropic, or others, you already know what tokens are and how tokens operate. And it is the native unit of cost between all things AI. So this just over the next few slides, we're going to break down exactly why the shift is happening and what it unlocks and what the timeline looks like. Change, there we go. So now that you understand the 3 token types, let's talk about the variables that actually drive how many tokens a given interaction consumes. Because it's not just about what you type, there are several factors at play. The model itself is the first major key to this. Each model has its own rate card with different per token prices for input, output, and cache tokens. A request to a frontier model will cost more per token than a request to a lighter model, say the GPT-4o or some of the older ones. Different models also have different usage profiles. So some are more verbose in their outputs, and some handle context more efficiently. So the model choice is one of the biggest levers you have to for managing cost. Prompt size is the next piece. So the more context you feed into the model, the more input tokens you consume. So this includes the code that you're working on, surrounding files, and any additional context that the tool gathers automatically. Larger code bases and richer context windows naturally drive higher token counts. So it's very important to to send what you need and not just everything, and it's not the kitchen sink. So response size is the next lever that we have. So longer outputs mean more output tokens, and those are the most expensive per token. So a simple one-line code suggestion is cheap. A multi-file refactoring explanation is significantly more. And so that's another one of the big things we have to keep in consideration as we start thinking about how this all works together. The fourth lever is context and cache. And so as we discussed, reuse context from prior turns in a session gets cached at a lower rate. So longer focus sessions tend to be more cost efficient than many short disconnected interactions because more context can be reused. And so it's a huge piece of it. So trying to stay in the moment and trying to stay in in the zone will have a better per response or per output token efficiency overall. And the fifth is agentic workflows. So it's multi-step work that happens. This is where things really scale up. When Copilot operates in agentic mode, reasoning across multiple steps, calling tools, reading files, iterating on solutions, each step in that chain processes tokens. A multi-step agentic workflow can consume significantly more tokens than just a single turn interaction would. So this is the most powerful mode, but it's also the most token intensive. You can really get out of control fast if you're not doing it in the most optimized way. MCP and skills is our final lever here that we can kind of work with. The tools attached via skills and MCP servers. So when Copilot invokes external tools as part of a workflow, those tool calls and their responses also contribute to token usage. And so as the actions roadmap expands, this will become an increasingly relevant factor to monitor. So here's some questions that before we get started into the actual budget controls. But what are the right guardrails for AI growth? Some questions that we want to ask. So how much is the business willing to spend on AI services? How much should any engineer be able to spend? Do we have a limit? What is the maximum each business unit or team can spend? And what are our plans for exceptions? Does any individual user or account need an exception to those budgets? Do you have a rock star developer that you need to give 5 times the amount for, that you don't want to be limited? These are questions that we want to start thinking about. So now we're going to move into section 2 of the workshop. So this is budget controls. This is where we shift from understanding what usage-based billing is to understanding how you control it. So the budget system is the governance layer that sits on top of the usage-based billing. It's how you set spending limits, allocate resources across your organization, and ensure that no single team or user can generate runaway costs. So budgets are your guardrails. This is your governance. So over the next several slides, we'll walk through the layered budget model from top to bottom. With this is the most configuration heavy part of the session, but it's also the most actionable. So let's dive into it. As you can see, we're going to start with the foundation of the whole system, AI credit pooling. And I kind of touched on this earlier, but we're going to get into it a little deeper in the next couple slides. So this is the concept that makes usage-based billing fundamentally different than the old per user request model. Now, here's kind of how it works: is every Copilot license in your enterprise or your organization contributes its AI credit value to a single shared pool. If you have 100 Copilot Enterprise license at $39 each, that creates a shared pool of $3,900 in AI credits. And so all licensed users draw from this one pool, and there are no individual per user allocations at this layer. Previously, if one developer, or maybe today, I guess, if one developer barely used Copilot and another was a power user, those allocations couldn't balance out. Now they can. So the pool will naturally absorb variance in usage patterns across your user base. So the chart on screen shows the 2 categories. We have the included AI credits from your licenses and any additional spend that occurs after that pool is exhausted. That additional spend is what gets managed through the enterprise level budget, so which we'll cover next. The key takeaway is that the enterprise budget is purely about additional spend. It doesn't affect how the included pool works. That's automatic. So the budget only kicks in after the pool is fully consumed. The big advantage of the pooled model is that included usage can flex across the enterprise instead of being locked to individual users. So in the old model, a high usage developer could trigger overage even if other users had still had included usage sitting unused. With the pooled model, that unused value is not stranded. So users now can draw from the shared pool based on actual need. That's why with the pooled mode, we've created user level budgets, which we'll talk about next. While the entitlement pool is shared, admins can still set limits on how much any one user can consume. So that helps prevent a single heavy user from unexpectedly drawing down too much of the pool and just from unexpected usage and things. The pooled model gives customers more efficiency and flexibility, while user level budgets give you control to manage individual consumption. Okay, so we're moving along pretty well here. User level budgets. This is something that's new. This is a new concept for us for the GitHub Copilot billing. So this helps you ensure that new users don't accidentally overspend. It provides baseline spending authority. So the bottom layer of the budget hierarchy is user level budgets. This is where you get per person control, and it works differently from the layers above because it governs total consumption, not just additional spend. So a user level budget controls the total number of AI credits a user can consume in a billing period. That includes both their draw from the shared pool and any additional spend. So this is a key distinction. It is the enterprise and cost center budgets only govern additional spend, but user level budgets cap the total consumption regardless of where the credits come from. So there are 2 types. First is the universal default. Now think of this as the fairness control. It's a single budget that applies to every user across the enterprise unless it is explicitly overridden. If you set a universal budget at say $50 in AI credits per user per month, every user gets that cap. That's the max that they can use. It's the easiest way to prevent any single user from disproportionately consuming that shared pool. So if you had $3,900 and you gave $3,900 in credits and you gave 3 people a weekend at it, they could probably run through that really quickly. This will allow you to cap that and then make decisions based on when they run into those budgets. The second is the individual user level budget. And so this is the power user override. It lets you set a specific budget for a specific user that overrides the universal default. So if you have developers doing heavy agentic work or who need a higher limit, you can create individual budgets for them. These are configured on a per user basis, and there's an API for bulk management. One important operational detail is the maximum number of separate budgets across your enterprise is 10,000. That includes all budget types, not just AI credit budgets, but also actions, storage, and other feature budgets. And the recommended approach for large organizations is to set a single universal default, then use individual overrides for the users who genuinely need different limits. A planned enhancement will also let you assign an individual user level budget to all users within a cost center, which will simplify setup significantly for teams that need a different default than the rest of the org. So this is the diagram. This is the map for your entire budget system. The user level budget, so this comes in 2 flavors, universal and individual. Universal budget is a default that applies to all users unless it's overridden, and the individual user level budget overrides the universal default for specific users. The power users and such would be the ones that would be in the individuals. In the middle, you have the cost center level budget. And so that's where you would allocate spend across business units or teams, and cost centers. Cost centers can be mapped to either organizations or groups or users or teams and such. So these control how much additional spend a given cost center can consume after that shared pool is exhausted. That's it's a big one to consider. And then the next is the enterprise level budget. This controls whether additional spend beyond the included AI credit pool is allowed at all. And if it is, what the maximum total additional spend can be. Think of this as your global ceiling. This is where everybody would be, where the top that you'd be able to spend for your entire organization. Every layer has its own pool of additional usage. So the enterprise pool feeds the cost center pools, which in turn constrain user level consumption. So all of these draw from the shared AI credit pool before any additional spend kicks in. So now we're going to walk through how the budgets interact. So I'm going to dive in here to how these budgets work together to give you fine-grained control, based on your enterprise's needs. So phase 1 is the entitlement pool. All users draw from the same pool. Only ULB budgets are checked there. And so it's important to remember. After phase 2, when phase 2 begins, when every dollar of usage here on is classified as additional spend. So it's beyond the typical entry, the license fee and the included amount. So for every additional dollar, 3 things are checked simultaneously. Does this user's ULB still have headroom? Have they they didn't exhaust their user level budget before the pool was done, did they? So that's the first thing it checks. The second check is, does the user's cost center still have any headroom? So we can make sure if the whole cost center hasn't utilized their entire budget. And then the third thing is, does the enterprise budget still have any headroom? Obviously, I think if the enterprise level budget is exhausted, you're probably going to know about it before you just run into it. There's going to be a lot of people complaining, but yeah, that would be the top level budget. So if enterprise budget is set to exclude cost center usage, all cost center usage is not counted against the enterprise budget. Users and cost centers can continue spending against their cost center budget even after the enterprise budget is exhausted. So users outside of cost centers are still governed by the enterprise budget. Budget scenario. So we've talked about how the billing model works. now the layers of, we've talked about how the billing model works, the layers of budget control, and how tokens translate into AI credits. Now we're going to walk through real world scenarios that show you exactly how these budget tools interact. The goal of this section is to give you a mental model for how to set your budgets. Not just picking a number, but understanding the dynamics. Because the way that shared pool gets consumed, the way user level budgets intersect with cost center budgets, and the way blocking works can produce outcomes that aren't immediately obvious if you haven't walked through the math. So a user level budget sets the default usage limits for all licensed users, while individual user level budgets can be applied to specific users who need a different limit. This lets admins establish a baseline control across the enterprise while giving certain users more or less flexibility based on their expected usage. So remember, ULBs apply to the pool and the additional usage. A universal budget or universal ULB sets the default usage limit for all licensed users. While individual ULBs override that limit for specific users, adding cost centers budgets lets admins manage spend for defined groups or business units. And an enterprise budget sets the overall spend ceiling across your enterprise. So you can set Azure subscription per cost center. If you have all 4 budgets in play, you can set up power users within a cost center, within a cost center A, in this case. By setting up individual ULBs, you can override the universal ULB and set the cost center budget accordingly. The enterprise budget still acts as the overall spend ceiling across the enterprise, unless cost center A is configured to be excluded from the enterprise budget. Monitoring usage and spend. We're moving right along, so hopefully you guys have some questions once we get there. So let's start one day before the usage goes live. So June 1st, everything's going live. That's Monday. The good news is that you already should have budget controls in place, we hope, especially after this call. Your existing per request unit budgets are set and active and they should be controlling any additional spend above your included entitlements. So the key message is simple. No action is needed from you before the transition if you have these set in place. Your current budget controls remain active and will carry over, so that when we make the change, all those should carry over, and they'll give you a stable baseline as we move into the new billing model. So you should be able to check it and see everything go. You don't need to scramble to set anything up at the last minute. The system's designed to transition smoothly, and your existing guardrails stay in effect throughout the process. So suggest if you don't have any billing things set up, to start looking at those today rather than finding out the hard way on Monday what it's going to do to you. And so on June 1st, here's what happens when when usage-based billing goes live. The most important thing to know is that your budgets are automatically transitioned to AI credits. There's no manual migration required on your part, no effort. It's just going to happen that morning. The system will handle the conversion, so you're protected from day one. A few things in your billing experience to keep in mind. First, your included usage now reflects the pooled entitlements across the Copilot Business and Copilot Enterprise licenses instead of seeing per seat allocations. You'll see that consolidated pool, which is actually simpler to manage and should be easier to see, especially in large organizations and large enterprises. It should be a little easier to manage for you admins out there. So second will be the billing UI is updated to show AI credits as the unit of measurement. So with filters available by model and by user, so you can drill into exactly where usage is going. One thing to note here is that no user level budgets are set by default on day one. So it's intentional. It gives you the flexibility to review your initial usage patterns before deciding where to place individual gates and guardrails. So you're not locked into anything, and you can add user level budgets whenever you're ready. But please, you want to keep an eye out for your super users. You don't want that guy to come in on say July 1st and do some heavy lifting, on over the weekend, and or over the 4th of July holiday or whatever, whatever the story is. You don't want to be building something huge and deplete all of your AI credits for the rest of the team who hasn't even had a chance to start. So you want to have some sort of controls in place, and we suggest that you continue monitoring them consistently throughout, from here on out. So now we're going to look at user level budgets. This is step 1 of 3 in the user level budget setup flow. So when you're viewing usage, per user usage in the billing interface, the system's going to prompt you to consider setting user level budgets. You can see it on the page there, saying, have you thought about this? Create a budget now. So this is a proactive nudge. The system is essentially saying, hey, you're looking at individual usage data. Would you like to set some guardrails? Kind of to remind you that this is something that we have, we're able to use, or that we're able to set up. The second piece is user level budgets to track both included usage and additional paid usage. So this is super important. It's not just capping overages, it's giving you visibility into total consumption per person. And so the primary use case is preventing, like I said, a single user from depleting your entire shared entitlement pool or from generating surprise cost overruns. So think of that Pareto distribution 80-20 rule that's out there. If you have a few heavy users consuming disproportionately, user level budgets are how you keep that in check and how you can continue to grow or to continue to understand what they're doing. So this is the end state. What happens when a budget is actually reached? So when you hit your enterprise budget, a few things happen in sequence. So first, admins will receive warnings at 75, 90, and 100% of usage. So they'll get those at all 3 thresholds. So you're never caught off guard. At 75%, it's a heads up. Hey, start monitoring closely. At 90%, it's a signal to decide, hey, what's next steps? Whether you want to increase the budget now or let it cap. And at 100%, you will know, we're not working right now. We're not going to get that stuff. We're not going to be able to use the coding agents at this point. So none of it's should be no surprises. I don't suggest sending that to an unmonitored email address or anything like that. Set it up to where you can view it, and people will get notified, and it'll actually have some importance and have some validity for your group. So when the budget is fully consumed, end users are blocked from additional usage until the next billing cycle starts, or until you get an increase in the admin, or until an admin increases the budget. This is the hard stop that prevents runaway costs. Users will see a clear message in that their usage has been capped, and they'll know to reach out to their admin if they need that limit raised. The important thing here is that admins have full control. If users are blocked and there's a legitimate business need, you can increase the budget at any time to restore that access right away. The blocking is a guardrail, not a permanent wall. It's there to make sure that the overage is a conscious decision and not an accident. So we're going to talk about next steps and what comes next. These are the concrete steps that you should take to prepare for and optimize under usage-based billing. So first, you want to review your enterprise usage patterns. You should be looking at your current Copilot usage data to understand where you fall on that distribution curve that we talked about a little earlier. Are you seeing Pareto patterns, normal distributions, or something in between? And it's important for you to set meaningful budgets over time. The second thing you want to do is align on budget controls and usage expectations. So that'll mean answering some specific questions with your organization, like who owns monitoring, how often will you review the usage data, where should your initial budgets be set, and remember, you can always adjust so you don't have to agonize over getting it perfect on day one. Who needs guardrails and at what level, the user cost center or enterprise, and then the third consideration is that we want to consider how you want to advise your organization on usage. So partner with your development teams to optimize usage patterns and figure out ways to be as efficient as possible. So this goes beyond just setting budgets. It really is, is about helping your developers get the most value per token, which naturally reduces costs while improving productivity. So the key message is that this is not a set it and forget it situation. You're not gonna be able to turn it on and just go, and it's not going to maintain temperature for the entire time. You have to constantly check this out and make sure that what you're going to do, because in theory your AI usage is going to continue to go up, and so you have to set new budgets as you go, and make sure that you're not going to run into it. This month you might run into a budget guardrail on the 30th day of the month, but next month it might be the 27th because you're using 3 days quicker. You're hitting your limits 3 days quicker, just based off of usage patterns and such. And it's a common theme across all customers. So you don't want to hit these things hard or in a hard way against the with your development teams. And so usage-based billing gives you much more granular control, but it also requires that management. So it's something that the first few billing cycles, as you kind of calibrate the settings to your organization's usage patterns, will take some getting used to, but eventually it should just become part of your process, part of what your team goes through on a monthly or weekly or daily basis, however you need to do it, and you should be able to get there pretty quickly. And so that brings us to the end. Now we're 2:41, so we've got a little bit of time. I want to thank you for joining us.